Today's episode, do I want to draw Ben 10 characters or Avatar the Last Airbender characters? Aliens or benders? Aliens and benders? Alien versus bender. Ooh. Anyone who follows Popcross Studios regularly knows that I really like weird versus battles. Like, the ones that make sense are fun too, like Goku vs. Superman and Spider-Man vs. Batman and all those kinds of ones. But I really like the weird ones, like just thinking, oh, wouldn't it be cool if Venom and Alita fought? Like I drew in that Sketchbook Pro video the other day. Or the Goku versus a whole bunch of people animation from last week. So for this video, because I wanted to do some Ben 10 and Avatar/Korra characters, we're going to build up to a versus, but first, I'm going to just draw some individual drawings of some of the characters, because there were a bunch of aliens I missed that were requested from the Ben 10 episode a few weeks ago, and I want the battle to be just 2 characters, but I don't want to do a video about benders and not draw Korra. So let's start with some individual drawings, and then ramp up to a nice big fight drawing between Ben 10 and Aang. Let's do some drawing. Now, drawing Wildmutt was an absolute must for this episode. I don't know why I didn't draw him in the last one. I mean, there's so many cool Ben 10 alien designs that you can't do all of them in one video, because so many of them are just awesome, but Wildmutt is one of my absolute favorites. And it was funny, it was kind of difficult trying to figure out a pose for this one. Like, I liked a bunch of these ideas that I've got going here, and I really like this sort of one where he was like mid sort of gallop run thing, but I just kind of, I don't know, it would, like a lot of the times when I'm drawing the rough for a character, a big part of it is placing the torso versus the head, and with Wildmutt, his head is just like part of his torso, like his torso turns into his neck, into his head. So I don't know, that made it a little bit more complicated, but I really like the pose that I ended up doing here. I'd done it earlier on, but wasn't sure about it, but I think it definitely was the best choice. And this will sound a little bit cocky, but I love how Ben 10 characters look in my style. That last Ben 10 episode, some of those characters are just a few of my favorite things I've drawn in ages. I think it's just like the cartoony style with the next level up of cel-shaded rendering just looks really good. So this one, I'm really happy with how it turned out too. Here's what it ended up looking like. Now, as I said, I felt like I couldn't do this episode and not draw Korra, because I love Korra so much as a character. I'm still undecided between which show I liked better, Avatar versus Korra. I think Avatar was probably a bit more consistently good, but Korra just had so many good moments, and as a character, I think she's got a super cool design. Because we're kind of ramping up to a bigger image, I decided to just draw Korra bending water and not a whole bunch of elements. And the one part of this image that I was kind of concerned about doing was the actual drawing of the water itself. I really like the composition of this one, the way the water's kind of flowing from behind her, going through her backhand to the front, like shooting forward. But the actual rendering of the water, I was a little bit nervous about, because I haven't really done any drawings where I really like how I rendered the water. Fire, I've been liking how I've been doing lately, but the water I was a bit nervous about. And this one I actually really end up liking. I mean, it helps that I wanted to focus on that a bit. I knew it was going to be a bit of a potential problem for me, so I was like, okay, I'm going to try and make the water really good. And you can see I kind of detail it a bit as I go. Here I put a bit of lighting on it, and then I add a bit of shadow to it as I'm adding lighting and shadow to Korra. And then I went in and added a bit of extra just like light and dark streaks kind of splashing off of it, and I really liked how that looked. So here's the final result of the Korra drawing. Man, these are some fun characters to draw. Okay, we'll do one more solo character and then we'll get into the fight. Now, Alien X, admittedly, I'm drawing specifically because he was requested by a bunch of people, not because he's a character I'm super familiar with. I mean, he sounds like he's really cool, but as I mentioned in the Ben 10 episode, I've only watched all the way through the original series, and then I've watched a bit of the follow-up series, and I don't think I've ever actually seen an episode where Alien X showed up, but from everything I've heard, he sounds like he's really cool. But I was also a bit nervous for this one because he's got such a simple design, and it's also one that I think works better in movement because he's like solid black, but with sort of galaxy stars inside him that don't move on the outside of his skin. Like when he turns, the stars can kind of stay in the same place. And that's hard to get across in a still image because it kind of looks like these stars are just over his body. And also because he's so solid black and like rim lighting, it's hard to do details on him. But I still kind of like how this turned out. I think I made him a little bit too wide in the pose. But overall, I think this is still kind of cool looking. It's not my favorite drawing of the batch, but kind of cool. So here's Alien X. Alright everybody, a little bit of peanut butter and chocolate chips for luck and strength. Now let's get into this fight. Now I'll explain my reasoning behind picking forearms in a sec, but obviously the first thing that I have to do for this piece is draw a bunch of thumbnail sketches to figure out my composition. And for this one, I like a bunch of the ideas that I came up with, but two of them felt a little bit too similar to the Venom versus Alita one, which in a lot of cases what I do is just have two characters running towards each other. So I ended up going with the third option, which I think is a really good one. I'm not gonna lie, this is one of my favorite thumbnail sketches I've done in ages, which almost makes me a bit more nervous to do the actual drawing and rendering because I really don't want to mess it up since it's got such a great start, but I'm gonna do my best. Fingers crossed that this turns into one of the best things I've ever drawn on this channel. Alright, now as I said I would, I'll explain. I chose forearms largely because he was just one of the most requested characters from the last episode of the Ben 10 aliens that I didn't draw, but also I've mentioned I really like drawing a big character versus a small character, and not quite in the same way as my episode from 2 days ago, Avengers versus Dragons, where it's like a really, really big thing versus a smaller character. This I wanted to do more like different body shapes and body sizes, but still keep them relatively similar size. So I really like this dynamic between the two. And in terms of the composition for this image, it can be kind of tricky composing an image with two characters, because even with like three characters, you can kind of build a bit of a triangle with the characters. With two, it can be a bit rough. So what I looked at was a whole bunch of images from back when Marvel was doing that comic run of Avengers vs. X-Men. There were a bunch of really cool covers where it was an X-Men and an Avenger fighting, and I didn't rip off any of those directly, but I was taking inspiration from those for just finding cool ways to compose two characters about to duke it out. And this one, I really like that with the composition, I kind of naturally gave it a bit of a toilet bowl effect, which is that when what I call when the composition kind of spirals into the middle or into one focal point. And I did that in this image with Aang's elements are swooping up, forearms is kind of swooping over, the clouds are kind of, it's all just spinning in, and that's something that I've been practicing lately, but I just did it naturally without thinking, which feels really good because it means I'm getting better at just naturally composing my images nicely, which is the whole point of practicing. So you can get to a point where you don't have to think about these things, you just naturally do them. And that feels really good. Anyway, now you can see we're in the coloring stage and I'm pulling out all the stops. I'm doing all my more detailed versions of rendering, where I start with a layer of cell shading, erase a bit of it out, add another little layer of cell shading under it that's more subtle, and then I'm also fading some of the lines so it's not all totally sharp edges. There's a bit of a gradient to some of it. Also, you'll probably notice by now that I forgot the Omnitrix on Ben's shoulder. I do end up adding it in. It's not in the time lapse because I had to do it after the fact as I was finishing up. I was like, oh my god, I forgot that. But anyway, besides that, all the coloring is my usual workflow. For a more detailed piece, I think I ended up spending about 6 or 7 hours on this one. And then for Aang, what was kind of interesting in rendering him was I couldn't do the same level of definition with the shadows on his body because, well, he is like a very fit, muscular-ish character. He's like skinny muscular, whereas a lot of the other characters I draw are like very like broad chests, like thick, bulkier muscles, so that causes more shadow when the muscles are bigger. So it was kind of cool having to do a little bit more subtle muscle shadowing on someone. Just forced me to change things up a little bit, which is always good. And then the background, I did some details. I add a couple more after the time lapse ends, but that's pretty much it for this one. So let's take a look at Aang versus Forearms. Not gonna lie, I think this is in my top 5 favorite things I've drawn on Popcross Studios so far. I can't believe I forgot the Omnitrix though. On this video, when it's posted in the Discord, I'm gonna have to go to it and comment the emote, "Where's my tail, Papa?" because it's a pretty similar situation. Anyway, everybody, the next video that I'm gonna put out is probably gonna be a breakdown / reaction to the first animated short that I ever made and the process behind making it. It was frame by frame drawn, so I'm excited to go back and look at that because I haven't done that kind of animation in a while. But in terms of weird fights, let me know in the comments what you think a really cool fight would be to watch. Not in terms of like, who would win? Just imagine every character in the world was put on the same power level. So you could have Goku fighting Spider-Man, or Superman fighting Black Widow. Like, power levels don't matter, just who do you think it would be cool to watch fight? Because maybe I'll end up animating or drawing it on here. But anyway, I'm Christian Pearson, thanks so much for watching Popcross Studios, home of the nerdiest art videos on YouTube, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye, everybody.